George, you're a scientist.
I'm a chemist, yes.
Yeah, you're a scientist. So I assume that one of our listeners, Video Game Donkey, has wrote in to say, in my game of the year, 7 years running, Super Mario Brothers 2, how far and how fast is Mario falling like at the beginning of the game, right? Because like you start the game and just it's not like the other games where it's like you're in a calm environment. Like you just plummet out of the sky, like you're just rocketing down toward the. It seems fast. So like, how fast? How far?
So first of all, I'm a chemist, not a physicist. But if I were to take my very limited knowledge and very limited area of expertise and opine to this particular problem, here is what I would say: 21 Marios. So that's super not helpful, right?
Is that like a Newton? Like, what is that?
Well, that's therein, as the bard would say, lies the rub, right? It is about 21 Marios, right? But how big is Mario, right? And so you asked me when we were kind of discussing this a little bit beforehand, you said, oh, well, did you use like his canonical height? And I'm like, no, because they don't know what they're talking about. They're making stuff up. And also, there's so much about Mario's canonical height that doesn't make any sense when you look at it from a scientific point of view, which is what we strive to do here at Safety Goggles. So first, assumptions. Assumption is that Mario's anatomy and physiology is roughly mammalian. I think we can agree on that, right?
Yes. I think we could get more specific, but we can stop there.
Let's stop at mammalian, right? That's all I need from you, right?
Close enough.
Yes. So there are a number of problems that arise from this. Number one is how does Mario jump so high? Like, you've got a pretty high vertical leap, right? I think Mario would dunk on you morning, nightly, and ever so rightly.
Oh, yeah. No, he would not be allowed to play in the NBA. Like, it wouldn't be fair for someone to be able to dunk from half court.
And on top of that, like, after, being able to jump so high, right, is that when he lands, he doesn't, Deadpool in, Deadpool 2, like, do the superhero landing and they go like, oh, God, my knees,
Right. Yeah, he seems totally fine with it.
It doesn't shatter every bone in his body. So, like, and so when we were initially talking about this, you were like, well, what type of material must Mario be made out of in order to do this stuff? I'm like, no, let's assume that he's mammalian, right? So how do we then resolve these problems? So I asked that question, and before I start to answer that, I'm going to ask you a question. Why aren't humans as proportionally strong as ants?
Because of the cube square law?
You got it, right?
Yeah. Do you want to know why I know that?
Why?
Because I know that's why Gundams don't work.
Do you have some more backstory to that, or?
No, it's like every time somebody on the internet is like, oh, like, why don't we have Gundams yet? Like, the technology seems achievable. It used to be like, oh, you have to understand that like the humanoid physiology at that size wouldn't work because of the square cube law, and like here's how that works. Blah, blah, blah. The volume goes up faster than the surface area, and that's true. And like I do more or less understand the math there, but it's now like become such a thing on the internet that people just shout square cube law whenever somebody asks about like why don't we have giant robots.
So to that point, right? For those of our listeners that are not as familiar with the square cube law, is it basically says that the surface area or area of a thing goes up, at a squared rate, right? But the volume, the mass, goes up at a cubic rate, right? So that means that as something gets bigger, its surface area or square goes up slower. So what that means practically is that the musculature, right, does not get as the musculature power is based off of the square of the function, and the amount of mass or size that it is a cubic function. So even though we can lift way more than an ant, proportionally we are way weaker, right? So now here's one last question for you, and then it'll all start to come together, right? Is if you were to take my height, right, and drop me from 10 Georges high, what would happen?
I assume you would break your legs, like if you landed on your feet.
Yeah, I mean, like I would definitely break bones, might die, depending on, because you take that D6 fall damage, right? So it depends on whether you roll the 6 and I land on my head,
right?
Yeah, right. But definitely best case scenario, I'm probably going to break my legs, right?
Yeah, because I mean that would be close to 60 feet.
Yes, right. So I would be booking at that point, right? So true. Now, if I were to drop a mouse from 10 mouses high, what would happen to the mouse?
It would probably be a little pissed, but I don't think it would break anything or get seriously hurt.
Right. And that's the thing, right? Because of the square cube law, it has so much less mass versus its surface area, which is what determines drag and all this sort of stuff. So you drop a mouse from 10 mouses high, it's just going to like pop up and be like, the hell, man, right? So
therein, a quick tangent question.
Yeah.
Are we assuming the mouse's height is measured when it's down on all fours or when it is standing upright?
I mean, arguably either, but let's go with like shoulder height of a mouse, right?
Yeah. It's like a how would a horse wear pants question.
Yeah. I saw some new data on that too, which we should discuss at some point.
I'm glad there's still research dollars going into that.
So that's the thing, right? Is that Mario so when we say like, well, how far did Mario fall? 21 Marios, right? How tall is Mario? That's, I think, the question, because a lot of these physics problems get answered if Mario is of a certain size, right?
Okay. I'm quickly scanning on in my brain is like, have I heard someone argue for changing the gravitational constant of the universe as a way to solve video game physics? And I actually don't think I have. So I mean, like, go on.
Because that's the thing, right? Is that if you assume all other things being equal, right? If all you do, because if you say that Mario is 5'8" or whatever they say in the Mario canon, right? You have to really modify physics with a lot of magic to make that work. But if you just change Mario's size, it suddenly all makes sense. So what I did...
Would he be on an Earth-like planet? He's just very small?
Yeah.
Right? Because if he was tiny, but he was on a tiny little planet...
If he was tiny and on a tiny little planet...
all the other physics would be messed up.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So like, like the blocks, when they shatter, they seem to fall at like a normative rate, right?
Yeah.
So they'd like fall slower unless we're like looking at it time dilated, right? At which point then, it's like, okay, So again, you get push comes to shove on physics, something's got to change. And to me, when I was thinking about it, like the easiest to change is just Mario's height, right?
Yeah. Not that we are perceiving him fifth dimensionally.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could go that way, but why? So what I did was, I made an equation, right, which I am now calling the height to jump equation, right, which actually weirdly kind of holds up, because I did it with a mouse, a dog, and a human, and said I took how high can these things jump, right, in units their size, right? So a human can jump about 0.41 human heights, right? And this was like, more athletic humans. It's like, this is considered a very good vertical leap. I'm like, Mario seems like he's a professional jumper. I'll give him that, right?
Yeah, he's a jump man.
A mouse can jump about 6 mouse heights, and a dog can jump about 1 dog height, right? Ish.
Huh. Yeah, I guess it's the way they jump that makes it seem like it's so much higher, but yeah, that feels about right.
If you look at like where their back legs are compared to where their shoulders were when they jumped, about that. Now, and again, like there are big error bars on this, right? So there's a bunch of clustering, but about that, you get an equation, which is an inverse 1 over x equation, right? It's, I believe, if I can find my notes, it is 28.8 over x plus 0.24 is the approximate equation that I used, right? And so I plugged it in for the mouse and the human. I then verified it with the dog, which verified out approximately, and within the error bars of this experiment, right? And so with all of that calculated, I calculate that Mario is approximately 16.36 centimeters tall.
I kind of love this.
And then it all makes sense. His jump height, because Mario from a standing can jump about 2 Marios high-ish, from just a dead stop. And that makes sense if he's about that tall. The fact that he can fall nearly infinitely and just pick up and run along makes sense if he's about that tall. And you want to know the thing that clinched it for me is that Mario is about 6.36 centimeters tall, which is roughly 15 inches. 16.36 centimeters tall. And you know what the average box turtle's height is? 12 centimeters tall. Yeah. So, I mean, you see, they're telling you right there, right? Like, he's about a little bit taller than a turtle.
Yeah. So they're not giant. The Koopas are not giant turtles. They're normal sized turtles. So we mostly, I mean, with like some exceptions for like monsters and stuff, but I think generally the mammals, as you called them, like they're all about Mario's size, right? Like Peach is a little bit taller, but she's not 100 times taller, right? Luigi is a little bit taller.
2 inches taller.
Yeah, I mean they are all within, like, if you didn't have a frame of reference, which we don't, like they're all within normal human distribution from other humans, right? Like this guy's short, this guy's average, this lady's tall, right? Like and that's, but we had a frame of reference all along in the turtle, in the Koopas.
Yeah, because those are real things. And like if you think about like most of the other things that Mario, like even if you look at like the bullet bills, right? Like they're ridiculously large unless Mario's really small, and then they're roughly the size of a bullet, you know? Like anything that has a real world allegory, this size suddenly matches up. And then like, and this is where I got into like
pipes. That's why the coins are huge. Oh my God.
Yeah, they're all, I mean, roughly the size of a penny, you know, something like that, right? Yeah. So it was funny because as I started to do this, I'm like, it all makes sense. And that's when I felt like the meme of the guy with like his like crazy board, where I was like,
your red string board.
Yeah. So I was just like, no, this, in my opinion, remarkably holds up. So, in that sense, to answer the original question, if Mario is 16.36 centimeters tall, he only falls about 3.5 meters, 3.43 meters at the beginning of Mario, which again, if you figure, you know, dropping something that size about 3 meters, it's not that bad.
No,
that's why he's able to pick up and run.
So I have one potential wrinkle that I want to throw at you and see how well you can do this math on the fly.
Okay.
So because the game is a platformer, Mario's jump height is consistent whether he is Big Mario or Small Mario.
I believe so, yes.
I think, right? And Small Mario, I think, is one tile. So literally half the height. So now if he can jump, what did you say his leap is? 6 Marios?
His normal leap is 2 Marios.
2 Marios. So now he would be jumping 4 Marios?
Yes.
So that feels like, because the scale we're talking about is already, we're talking about safety, right? So like the safety, once you're below a certain size, falling from, big air quotes, a great height is not the threat it is to something that is like, I don't know, dog sized and up. Like if you dropped a dog off of the roof of a house, like you'd really mess up that dog, right? But if you dropped a person off of a roof, like you might actually kill them, right? Like it's, especially if they fell onto like a hard enough surface. So once you are below, like once you're down around that like box turtle mouse kind of size, then maybe it doesn't matter that much. He's just proportionally way stronger when he's the short Mario, which is why he can jump still to the same height.
But that's the thing though, is that like, as you get smaller, proportionally, you get stronger, right? If you back calculate it and you assume that now he is able to jump 4 times his height as opposed to double his height, then that would mean, because of the way that the curve of the equation walks out, that he would be about 7.2 centimeters tall. Keeping in mind that normal Mario is 16.36 centimeters tall. So not quite exactly half, but, you know, pretty close. So, yeah, it kind of susses out that, you know, that he's right in that sweet spot of that curve where it's starting to recurve and you're starting to get the asymptotic, you know, end to it.
Yeah. Oh man. Now every time I play Mario, I want it with like a tilt shift filter. So everything looks like a little toy from up close instead of normal size stuff from far away.
Well, and also too, you know, like in my mind, it makes it like way cooler because it's it's when you're playing Mario, right? Is you're like playing with action figures, right? And it makes sense because you're just making a story, and it's just like this little dude running around. So when all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, like how did it get from being the sandy desert to like the ice cold things? It's like because you put a pile of sand next to a cold cup of water. Like it's really easy to create microclimates when you're dealing on that scale. So yeah, it's tiny people all the way down.
Hmm. I like I'm sometimes lukewarm on like it was all in their imagination as like a hand wavy explanation. But one, this is already canonically true in parts of the Nintendo universe, because that's the whole framing device for Smash Brothers, right? Is like it is literally a kid like banging his Nintendo toys together. So like that's perfectly fine. And also, unlike most like FNAF theories, it's not, the implications are not dark and horrible. They're kind of like warm and charming. So it's like, oh, it's the reason Mario works is because like it's a small toy that could totally survive the fall. Or even if this is just their real society is just tiny, then like it's just because of his size. It's not because he has adamantium bones or spring shoes or some ridiculousness. He's just small.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like the mega gargantuan people who named themselves before they realized they were tiny. I mean, like, it doesn't change the scope of their struggle. Like, all of the issues, all of the games, it all still happens and also happens as viewed. It's just, it's just tinier.
Just tiny. Oh, man. I love this. Actually, that reminds me of another thing I want to ask you about.